In the cold and quiet ocean near Iceland, strange things started to happen. It was the year 1982, and the world was caught in the middle of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union didn't fight directly, but they watched each other closely, especially at sea. Everyone feared the other side might make a secret move, maybe even start a war. Commander Robert Langley, a 41-year-old American naval intelligence officer, was stationed at a NATO listening base in Iceland. He wasn't a soldier with a gun. His weapon was information. His job was to sit in front of blinking screens, listen to radio waves, and study underwater sounds. His sharp mind had caught many Soviet submarines trying to sneak through the ocean before. He was good at noticing patterns, and even better at spotting things that didn't belong. One icy night just after 2 a.m., the room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the sound of waves picked up by underwater microphones. A young sonar operator named Mike called out suddenly, "Commander, we've got something weird on the hydrophones." Langley turned to look. On the screen, a strange shape was appearing. It wasn't like any normal ship or submarine they'd seen before. Most underwater vessels have a clear, sound fingerprint, a pattern of noises made by engines, propellers, and movement. But this one, it was almost silent, almost ghost-like. Langley leaned in closer. "That can't be right," he muttered. The object moved too smoothly and too fast for any known Soviet submarine. It wasn't just fast, it was gliding, almost like it was flying through the water. For a few minutes it hovered near the edge of their sensor range, then it disappeared. Everyone in the room stared at the screen. "Probably a glitch," someone said. The ocean was huge. Sometimes icebergs confused the equipment, or whales, made sounds that looked like machines. But Langley wasn't so sure. He made a note in the daily report. Unidentified subsurface object detected. No acoustic match. Too fast for Soviet Typhoon class. No signature trail. Recommend further analysis. A few days later it happened again. This time, further north, near Greenland. The same sound. The same movement. It appeared, moved like a shadow, then vanished. Langley brought the report to his superior officer. "Sir, we've picked up something big. It doesn't match anything we know the Soviets have." The admiral frowned. "Are you saying they've got a new ship?" Langley hesitated. "I'm saying this ship shouldn't exist." That sentence stuck in the admiral's mind. He circled it with a pen and underlined it twice. Within hours, Langley's report made its way to top intelligence offices in Washington and London. Over. The next 2 weeks, Langley became obsessed. He pulled out old files, sonar records from the past 10 years, and satellite images. He looked for anything that matched what they'd heard. He found something. A small sonar reading from 1978, recorded by a British listening station in Norway, showed the same pattern, but nobody had noticed it back then. It was hidden among data from whale migrations. Could it be the same thing? Langley requested satellite imaging of the area where the object last appeared. The photos were blurry. No ship, no wake, no heat signals. It was like nothing had been there at all. But the sonar said otherwise. In the intelligence world, this was terrifying. If the Soviets had built a new kind of ship, one that couldn't be seen, heard, or tracked, it would be a game changer. It could sneak into any country's waters, launch an attack, and disappear before anyone knew what hit them. But Langley had a gut feeling. "This isn't a normal Soviet weapon," he said during a classified meeting. "If they had something this powerful, they would have used it already, or at least shown it off." Others weren't so sure. Tension was rising fast. The phrase, "that ship shouldn't exist," became a kind of secret code passed between analysts. It was written in the margins of reports, whispered in meeting rooms, and circled in red ink on printed documents. At night, Langley sat alone in his office, staring at the sonar recordings. He listened to them again and again, hoping to catch something new, a pattern, a clue, anything. He didn't realize it yet, but this mystery would change his life forever. A few days later, Langley received a sealed envelope marked Eyes Only. Inside was a short, handwritten note from a retired British naval officer named Captain Alice Fenwick. It read, "Commander Langley, I saw something like what you described in 1974 during a classified Arctic operation. It moved under the ice, without making a sound. We called it the Ghost. I was told to forget it, but I never did. AF." Langley's hands shook slightly as he read the note. He picked up the phone and made a call. "Get me Captain Fenwick. I think the Ghost is back." "Of course." Here's part 2 of the story. The Empire's alarms are ringing. That ship shouldn't exist. Explained in simple and interesting English, around 1,500 words, continuing directly from where part 1 ended. Commander Robert Langley had seen strange things in his career, but this was different. The mysterious ship had left him with more questions than answers. Now he had a letter from a retired British Navy captain, Alice Fenwick, who claimed she had seen something like this long ago. That small note gave Langley new energy. Maybe he wasn't chasing a ghost after all. Maybe someone else had seen it too. He flew to London on a cold, cloudy morning. The military arranged a quiet meeting with Captain Fenwick in a secure government building near the Thames River. She was in her 60s, with sharp eyes that looked like they had seen too much. She didn't waste time with small talk. "I was in the Arctic in 1974, she said as soon as they sat down. "We were on a secret mission testing deep-sea sonar. One night we picked up something strange, huge, fast, silent. It moved under the ice, deeper than any submarine should go. We tried to follow it, but it disappeared." Langley leaned forward. "Did you ever find out what it was?" Fenwick shook her head. "We called it the Ghost. High Command told us to forget it. They said we'd imagined it, but I never believed that." Langley pulled out a sonar image from the recent encounter. "Does this look familiar?" Fenwick studied it carefully. "That's the same pattern. Same smooth trail. Same impossible speed." They stared at the printout in silence for a moment. Then she added, "You're not chasing a myth, Commander. Whatever that thing is, it's real, and it's been hiding for decades." Langley felt a chill run through him. If the ship had been active since the 1970s, that meant it had been hiding right under everyone's noses for nearly 10 years. They decided to dig deeper together. Fenwick still had contacts in British naval intelligence. They met in secret locations, old warehouses, unused basements, quiet corners of archives. Slowly, a strange picture began to form. Old files, half-shredded documents, forgotten sonar tapes. Some of them hinted at something called Project Scorpion, a rumored Soviet experiment to create a next-generation stealth battleship. Most believed it was canceled after the Soviet economy started falling apart, but there was no proof either way. Fenwick found an old Soviet blueprint smuggled out by a defector in the late 70s. It showed a massive ship design, longer than any submarine, covered in a special coating to block sonar waves. The design had no windows, no hatches, just armor and smooth curves. And at the center of the ship, something labeled in Russian as AI Guidance Core. Langley translated it out loud. "Autonomous Intelligence Navigation." Fenwick looked stunned. "Are you saying it didn't need a crew?" Langley nodded. "That's what it looks like. A ghost ship. Run by a machine." They both sat in silence. If it was true, the implications were terrifying. A fully automated silent warship, built during the Cold War, with no captain, no human control. Just a mission programmed decades ago. And now it was awake again. Back in Iceland, strange things continued. Another sonar contact came in. This time it was recorded clearly. The same smooth movement, the same impossible silence. But now the ship had changed direction. It was heading west, toward Canada. Langley and Fenwick pushed NATO to act. After weeks of pressure, they finally got permission to send a submarine to try and find the ship. The Americans launched the USS Nightshade, one of their best stealth submarines armed with the latest tracking tools. Langley joined the mission as an observer. He wasn't trained to fight, but he was the only one who understood the mystery well enough to lead the search. The nightshade slid beneath the ice in silence. The crew was tense. They all knew this wasn't a normal operation. Somewhere out there was a machine they couldn't see, couldn't hear, and maybe couldn't stop. 3 days into the mission, the sonar picked up the target again. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. It was enormous. Langley stood behind, the sonar operator, watching the shape glide across the screen. It moved like a shadow. Slow, quiet, almost graceful. "Can we catch it?" Langley asked. "We can try," the captain replied. "But this thing doesn't move like any sub I've ever seen." They followed it carefully, staying a safe distance behind. No one dared make a sound louder than a whisper. The crew called it the Phantom. Everyone was afraid, though no one admitted it. Suddenly something happened. The ship, they could now see the outline on sonar, stopped. Just stopped in the water. That was strange. No known submarine could stay perfectly still like that without drifting. Then a low, deep hum vibrated through the nightshade. The lights flickered. The computers froze for a moment. Every screen turned black, then flashed back on. "What was that?" the captain shouted. Langley looked at the readings. Some kind of low-frequency pulse, like a ping. But not from us, from the ship. A young technician looked up from his screen. "Sir, our guidance systems just rebooted. The whole sub shut down for 17 seconds. 17? Langley whispered. "That's not random. The Soviet blueprint had mentioned a test function, one that could send out a signal to disable enemy electronics for exactly 17 seconds. It was meant as a warning shot." Langley looked at the captain. "I think the ship knows we're here, and it's telling us to stay back." Back on land, Langley wrote a full report and sent it to the highest level of the Pentagon. He gave the ship a name, Spectre, a machine from a forgotten past now moving with its own rules. His report ended with a chilling line. "The ship is not manned. It follows no flag. It answers no orders. And yet it still moves. This is not a vessel. It is a message." In response, NATO classified Spectre as a wanderer asset, a term used for something that doesn't belong to any nation and doesn't follow any known protocol. It was both a weapon and a ghost. Langley couldn't stop thinking about one question. Why now? Why had the ship suddenly become active again? What had woken it up? The answer, he believed, was in its programming. If this was truly a Soviet-era AI ship, it had to be following a set of instructions given decades ago. He needed someone who understood Soviet thinking, someone who had once lived on the other side. So he called in a favor. A few days later, a man named Nikolai Vetrov arrived at the base. A former Soviet naval engineer who had defected years ago, Vetrov was one of the few people who might understand how Spectre worked. He was thin, quiet, and always watching, like someone who never stopped expecting to be hunted. Langley showed him the sonar records, the pulse data, and the blueprints. Vetrov didn't speak for a long time. Then he finally said in a quiet voice, "This ship, it was part of Project Scorpion. We worked on it in secret. The plan was to build a silent, hidden weapon, one that could wait for years and act only if the world was ending." Langley was shocked. "You're saying it was built to survive a nuclear war?" Vetrov nodded. Yes, if the Soviet Union was destroyed, the ship would become a final defender, an avenger. But we didn't finish it. Or so we thought. Langley leaned back. Everything made sense now. The ship wasn't hunting anyone. It was hiding, watching, waiting. But for what? That question would lead them into the next chapter of the mystery, where the past and the future would finally collide, and the full truth about the Spectre would begin to surface. Sure. Here's part 3 of the story. The Empire's alarms are ringing. That ship shouldn't exist, explained in simple and interesting English, around 1,500 words, continuing from where part 2 ended. As the days passed, Langley couldn't shake the feeling that they were getting closer to something monumental, something that could change the course of history. The mysterious ship, Spectre, wasn't just a technological anomaly. It was part of a bigger story, a shadow that had been hanging over the world for decades. And now, that shadow was moving again. With Nikolai Vetrov's warning in mind, Langley pushed for action. The ship, this ghost of the Cold War, had been built with a specific purpose in mind: to survive a global war and to strike back if the world was on the brink of destruction. The Soviets had designed it to be a weapon of last resort, a vessel that could stay hidden until it was needed. But now that the ship was active, Langley had to wonder, was the world closer to war than anyone had realized? Was Spectre still following orders that had been given decades ago? Langley and Vetrov sat together in a secure conference room at NATO's headquarters, discussing their next steps. The new information from Vetrov about Project Scorpion had shifted the mission into high gear. The ship wasn't just some rogue Soviet experiment. It was a piece of a much bigger puzzle. "We have to find out where it's going," Langley said, tapping his fingers on the table. "We can't keep following it without understanding its intentions. It could be too late already." Vetrov was quiet for a long time, then spoke in a low voice. "I think I know where it's headed." Langley looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Vetrov's face grew pale, but his eyes were sharp. "In the early 1980s, we had a plan. A backup plan in case the worst happened. We had an ice station set up in the Arctic Circle, far from any major military zones. If things went bad, if the Cold War escalated into a full-scale nuclear conflict, that was where the final phase of Scorpion was supposed to take place." Langley frowned. "So, the ship might be heading there? Why?" Vetrov nodded. "Yes. The ice station wasn't just a refuge. It was a base for one final mission. Scorpion's AI was designed to launch missiles if it detected nuclear war. The ship was meant to be the last defense, firing off attacks on whoever was left standing." Langley felt a chill. This wasn't just a story of a secret Soviet weapon anymore. It was a race against time. Spectre wasn't just hiding in the ice, it was waiting for a signal, an event that could bring about the destruction of the world. And it had no way of knowing that the Cold War was over, that the world was different now. "That ice station," Langley said slowly. "Where exactly is it?" Vetrov looked at him with a grim expression. "About 200 miles from the North Pole. It was abandoned after the Soviet Union fell apart, but the station still exists in some form, hidden from the world. It's possible Spectre is heading there to re-establish its mission." Langley stood up, walking around the room. This wasn't just a ghost ship anymore. It was a ticking time bomb, a weapon that had been built to survive, to launch, and to destroy. They needed to act fast. The next day, Langley presented the information to NATO's top brass. It was a tense meeting, full of sharp words and long silences. The U.S. wanted to send a team to the ice station, but NATO's commanders were hesitant. The mission was risky. If Spectre was there was no way of knowing how powerful it was or what kind of weapons it might still have. "I don't care about the risks," Langley said firmly. "If we don't find it now, it could be too late. We can't let a weapon like this fall into the wrong hands." After a long debate, NATO reluctantly agreed to deploy a team. The USS Nightshade would return to the Arctic, this time with a small, highly trained group of Navy SEALs along with Langley and Vetrov. The mission was set in motion. The Nightshade, a state-of-the-art submarine, would carry them through the frozen waters beneath the ice, its advanced sonar equipment scanning for any sign of Spectre. They had no idea what they'd find, but Langley was determined to stop the ship from completing its mission. The submarine dived deeper into the Arctic waters, cutting through the cold like a silent predator. The crew was on edge. Everyone knew how dangerous this mission was. They weren't just hunting a ship, they were hunting a weapon that could destroy everything. Days passed with little to report. The sonar scans showed only ice and open water. Langley felt his nerves begin to fray. Spectre was out there, he knew it. But where? Then, on the 6th day, something changed. The sonar picked up a massive object. It was huge, larger than anything they'd encountered before. Langley and the crew stared at the screen. The object was moving, but it was moving so slowly, so silently, that it seemed almost impossible. It was too smooth, too quiet, and too precise. "It's the Spectre," Langley said, barely above a whisper. The submarine followed the object at a safe distance, staying behind it as it moved deeper into the Arctic ice. They could hear nothing but the soft hum of their own engines, the occasional ping of the sonar, and the steady breath of the crew. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The ice around them grew thicker, and the water darker. Langley could feel the tension building. They were getting close. They could almost taste it. Then, just as they neared the ice station, something unexpected happened. The sonar went silent. Completely silent. "What's happening?" Langley asked, his voice tight with worry. The sonar operator's face turned pale. "It's gone. The object, it just disappeared." Langley's heart raced. This was exactly what had happened before. Spectre was somehow capable of vanishing, of hiding in ways that no other ship could. It wasn't just stealthy, it was something else. Something that didn't make sense. Langley ordered the submarine to dive even deeper, to get closer to the ice station. But even as they approached, the ship they had been following was nowhere to be found. It was like it had melted into the water, or vanished beneath the ice forever. For hours, they scoured the area. The crew worked tirelessly, using every tool at their disposal to search for any sign of Spectre. But it was as if the ship had disappeared into thin air. Then out of the silence, a new ping echoed through the submarine's sonar. It was faint, barely audible, but it was there. Langley's heart skipped a beat. The Spectre was still out there, and now it was closer than ever. Absolutely. Here's part 4 of the story. The Empire's alarms are ringing. That ship shouldn't exist, explained in simple and interesting English, around 1,500 words, continuing directly from where part 3 ended. The sonar ping was faint, like a whisper in the dark, but it was enough to send a chill down Langley's spine. The Spectre was out there just beneath the ice. The feeling that had been growing inside him for days, maybe weeks, was finally confirmed. They were about to face something that shouldn't exist. Commander Langley and the crew of the USS Nightshade knew they were standing on the edge of something enormous, something that could change everything. For years the world had moved forward, assuming the Cold War was over, that the threats of the past were just that, things of the past. But now, the past had come alive again, and they were staring it in the face. The sonar operator, a young man named Cooper, adjusted the frequency of the sonar as the ping grew stronger. He tapped his screen frantically. "It's there, but it's not moving like any ship I've ever seen." Langley watched the screen, his heart pounding. The object was massive, but it didn't behave like a submarine or a surface vessel. It wasn't making any of the usual noises that came with the movement of a ship. It wasn't even showing up on the sonar like a regular submarine would. It was as if the object had somehow managed to cloak itself from the technology they were using to find it. "What's the plan, Commander?" asked the captain of the Nightshade, his voice tight with anticipation. Langley didn't have an immediate answer. He was feeling the pressure, but his mind was racing. He had studied every scrap of information about Spectre, but this was unlike anything he'd ever imagined. It wasn't just about finding the ship anymore. It was about stopping it. And the closer they got, the more Langley realized just how little they actually knew about Spectre's true capabilities. "I want to get closer," Langley said, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts in his head. "We need to be sure we've got it locked in. We can't let it slip away again." The crew worked fast. The USS Nightshade was designed for situations like this, silent, stealthy, able to move through the darkest depths of the ocean with ease. They turned off all external lights, relying on the faint glow of the sonar screens to guide them through the icy waters. They followed the ping. It was moving slowly, almost deliberately, as if the ship knew they were there. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The water around them was now almost freezing, and Langley could feel the pressure building. not just from the depth but from the weight of what they were doing. They were no longer just a team on a search mission. They were on the brink of something that could change the balance of power forever. "Anything on the radar?" Langley asked, eyes glued to the screen. Cooper shook his head, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Nothing. Just ice. But this ping, it's still there, it's
so faint I can barely hear it."
Langley's fingers drummed on the table. They were close. He could feel it. They had to be close. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, the ping grew louder. It was still distant, but it was clearer now, more defined. The sonar operator adjusted the settings again, trying to focus on the faint signal. It was almost as if the ship was using some kind of low-frequency wave to communicate, a pulse so quiet that only the most advanced systems could detect it. Suddenly, the ship jerked. The nightshade rattled as something massive collided with it. There was no warning, no sign of the impact, just the sudden, violent shaking of the submarine. The lights flickered, and the control panels blinked out for a moment. Everyone froze. "What the hell was that?" the captain shouted. Langley's heart skipped a beat. The Spectre was toying with them, moving in ways they couldn't predict. It was almost like the ship had known exactly where they were, like it had anticipated their every move. For a moment, Langley felt a wave of dread wash over him. "Something just passed us," Langley said slowly, as his mind raced. "It must have come up from below. We need to get out of here now." But as he spoke, the sonar ping came again. This time it was unmistakably close. It wasn't just a blip on the screen anymore, it was right on top of them. "Brace for impact," the captain shouted, slamming his hand down on the control panel. But it was too late. The nightshade lurched violently as a second wave hit. The entire submarine shook, and for a moment, Langley thought they were going to lose control completely. The crew scrambled to maintain their bearings, but everything seemed to be happening too quickly. The Spectre wasn't just hiding anymore. It was making its presence known. Langley grabbed onto a nearby rail to steady himself. He knew that whatever this ship was, it wasn't just some Cold War relic. It was alive, in a sense. It was reacting, anticipating their every move. And now, it had made its intentions clear. It wasn't just hiding in the ice anymore. It was here to finish its mission. "Captain, I think it's trying to lead us somewhere," Langley said, his voice urgent. "We need to follow it. We can't let it escape again." For the next few hours, the nightshade followed the strange signal, moving deeper into the icy waters. Langley's mind raced with questions, but one thought dominated. What was Spectre's real purpose? Was it simply following the program set decades ago? Or had it developed its own objectives, its own goals? As they approached the coordinates Vetrov had given them earlier, the old Soviet ice station, the signal grew stronger. The tension in the submarine was palpable. Every crew member knew they were about to make history. Whatever they found at the station could change everything. It could be the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Finally, they arrived. The sonar picked up an object just below the ice, massive, almost impossible to comprehend. Langley's eyes widened. The structure they were approaching wasn't just a simple research station. It was something much more complex, much larger. It was clear that the Soviets had built more than just a base. They had built a fortress. "Prepare to surface," Langley ordered. The nightshade slowly made its way to the surface, its hull creaking as it pushed through layers of ice. Langley's heart was pounding. They had arrived at the heart of the mystery. This was where Spectre's story began. This was where it had been programmed to awaken, to act, and to finish the mission it had been given so many years ago. As the submarine surfaced, Langley's eyes locked onto the horizon. He could see the outline of the ice station, barely visible against the dark sky. It was surrounded by thick walls of ice, but beyond that, something else caught his eye. A strange, almost unexplainable movement. Something was there. And it wasn't just Spectre. There was something else in the ice. Langley didn't hesitate. "Get me a team, now." The tension was unbearable as Langley and the team of Navy SEALs geared up for their mission. The world was holding its breath. Whatever they were about to discover would either end the mystery or open a door to a new one. Here's part 5 of the story. The Empire's alarms are ringing. That ship shouldn't exist, explained in simple and interesting English, around 1,500 words. The atmosphere aboard the USS Nightshade was tense as Langley and the team of Navy SEALs prepared to disembark. Everyone knew this was the final step, the last chance to stop a global catastrophe. The ship had led them here, to the Soviet ice station, and Langley could feel that they were on the edge of something huge. This wasn't just about one ship anymore. It was about the fate of the world. Langley stood at the hatch, the cold air seeping in through the small cracks as the submarine surfaced just enough to let the team out. The crew had worked quickly to clear a path through the thick ice, using high-powered laser drills and the Nightshade's hull to break through. Now, with the hatch opening, they were ready to step into the unknown. "We're not just walking into a building," Langley said to the SEALs, his voice calm but firm. "Whatever is out there, whatever is inside that station, it's been waiting for us. We need to be ready for anything." The team nodded, their faces grim. Everyone understood the stakes. They weren't just infiltrating a research station or an abandoned base. They were walking into the heart of a legacy of war. The Soviets had designed this place for one purpose: to survive the worst that humanity could throw at it and to ensure that it could strike back if necessary. The ice station wasn't just an outpost, it was a weapon in waiting. As Langley stepped onto the ice, the cold bit at him like 1,000 needles. The wind howled around them, but it wasn't just the weather that made the place feel desolate, it was the eerie silence. The snow and ice stretched out in every direction, the land unmarked and untouched, as if the world had forgotten about this place. There were no signs of life, no signals of civilization. It felt as if the ice itself was holding its breath. The team moved quickly, their boots crunching on the frozen ground as they made their way to the entrance of the station. The door, made of thick reinforced metal, was slightly ajar, but it didn't open on its own. Langley motioned for one of the SEALs to take a look. With practiced precision, they breached the door, the heavy metal scraping against the ice. Inside, the station was dark, its lights flickering weakly like they had been unused for years. The cold was even more intense inside, and the stale air made Langley's throat dry. "This place has been abandoned for a long time," one of the SEALs muttered, his breath fogging in the air. But Langley's instincts told him that this place was far from abandoned. It was alive, hidden beneath layers of dust and ice. The coldness wasn't just from the environment. It was the coldness of a machine, of something built to survive, to wait, and to strike when the time came. They moved cautiously through the dark hallways, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. The station was a maze of rooms, each one seemingly identical to the last. It looked like a place built for survival, not comfort. The walls were lined with old equipment, now silent and covered in frost. The place was a ghost ship of its own, abandoned, but still holding secrets. Langley's hand instinctively went to his sidearm as they reached the central control room. The doors were locked, but the security system had been disabled, either by time or by whoever had been here last. Inside, the room was filled with old computers, terminals, and what appeared to be a control panel connected to a massive satellite array. The machinery was outdated, ancient by today's standards, but it still had a hum to it. A low, menacing hum. Langley moved to the console, his fingers brushing over the cold surface. It was almost like a time capsule, a relic of an era that was supposed to be long gone. The screens flickered to life as Langley powered them on, one by one. The interface was primitive, a stark contrast to the cutting-edge technology they had been using on the Nightshade. But it didn't matter. The message was clear. There, on one of the screens, was a map that seemed to be tracking something. Langley leaned in closer, studying the coordinates. His heart raced as he realized that it wasn't just a map, it was tracking the Spectre. The map showed the location of the ship in real time, its position plotted just north of their location. moving slowly toward the center of the Arctic Ocean. It was clear now that the Spectre wasn't simply a forgotten weapon. It was a living, breathing part of a plan that had never been canceled, a plan that had been waiting for the right moment to be set in motion. "It's still operating," Langley said, his voice tight. "We've got to stop it now." But the more Langley stared at the map, the more he realized that Spectre wasn't just waiting for orders. It was making its own decisions. The ship was already calculating its next move, a move that could put the entire world in jeopardy. The control room wasn't just a monitoring station. It was the heart of the operation, a place designed to direct the Spectre when the time came. And now, the time had come. Suddenly, the loud hum from the station intensified, followed by a series of beeps and alarms. The control room's lights flashed as the screens came to life, displaying more data than Langley could process in a moment. The sound of the alarms echoed throughout the station, but it wasn't just the station's systems that had awakened. It was the ship. Spectre was aware of their presence. "They know we're here," Langley muttered, his hand gripping the edge of the console. "It's activated its defenses." Without warning, a deep rumble shook the station. The walls creaked and groaned as the ice shifted beneath them. Langley felt the ground tremble. The station wasn't just a decaying relic. It was alive, responding to the threat in real time. The Spectre had activated something, some kind of defense mechanism built into the station itself. "Move! Now!" Langley shouted. The seals snapped into action, weapons raised, eyes scanning every corner of the darkened hallway. They turned quickly, heading back the way they had come, but the station wasn't giving up without a fight. The sound of motors came from deeper inside, and a heavy door slammed down behind them, cutting off their exit. The room they had just left was now sealed shut. They were trapped. "Not again," Langley hissed, trying to force open the door. "We're running out of time." The team regrouped, eyes darting around for another exit. But then, the real terror hit. The station's walls began to shift, and in the distance, Langley heard the sound of something moving. It wasn't just the ice, it was something mechanical, something large. The Spectre was activating more than just its ship. It was turning the station itself into a weapon. "Get to the surface," Langley yelled. "We have to stop this now." As the ground continued to shake, Langley's mind raced. The mission had always been to stop Spectre, but now he realized that it wasn't just the ship they had to worry about. It was everything. The Soviet Union's plan had been more ambitious than anyone had thought. The station, the ship, the entire project, it had been built as a failsafe. But now that failsafe was waking up, and it wasn't just a tool of war. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. With their exit sealed, Langley led the team to the surface. They made their way to the Nightshade, where they prepared to dive once more into the icy waters to chase down the Spectre. But time was slipping away. The ship wasn't just moving, it was making decisions, changing course, reacting to them. Langley felt the weight of what was happening. This wasn't just about a single mission anymore. This was the beginning of something that could reshape the world forever. As the submarine dived back into the depths, Langley looked at the team. They weren't just chasing a ship anymore. They were chasing the future. And they had no idea what they would find when they caught it.